It's v.h.s.x. What do you mean?
Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today, we're having an interesting video today. This is really a doozy. So we have a video that we're going to react and discuss to from UnladenCrow. I hope that's how you pronounce it. It was actually recommended to me by one of you guys in a Discord server. So if you want to join the server, the link is in the description. Scroll down the rules and hit the knife emoji at the bottom so you can accept the rules, talk with the rest of us about DBD or other topics. And this video is titled, Why is DBD in such a horrible state right now? Theory and developer info, with a little asterisk next to developer. So this is going to be really interesting. Now, the original video will be linked in the description. I'm just going to be covering specific talking points, and you can watch the rest on your own. But let's go ahead and get into it. So right off the bat, it says number one for what the general issues of the games are. The game is the layoffs are causing issues. It says that they hoped some internal changes would help boost efficiency to the point where they could keep up after layoffs. And it says they started trying to rehire to fill some programming roles from DBD. You can find multiple job listings on the Behaviour website. Just look at the state of DBD since the layoff. So that's, I mean, that checks out. Like that, I think that kind of goes without saying. I think that's like, I think that was public information. So
remaining employees would be able to keep up with the demand of keeping DBD running after a few changes like minor internal restructuring and shifts in management styles and a few other things. However, as we all know at this point, that hasn't exactly worked out. In short, it's because Behaviour ultimately wants to swap from being primarily a developer of games to a publisher of games.
Interesting. So this is a point that we can kind of go off of, where the shift to publishing. So Behaviour wants to go from a game dev company to a publishing company. They've talked about this on stream and on their website. They've added publishing to all their sections about game development, despite them having published very few games in the past few years. Now, to me, this does check out. They've been very just awful at game development in the first place. We've seen how bad DBD was, and Naughty Bear, and even the casting of Frank Stone, and even the Meet Your Maker, and I think even a recent game that just dropped, are just absolute stinkers. Like, nobody really cares about any of these games besides DBD. And they even stated in themselves that it was a side project. They didn't even plan for it to actually do well. And so I think that it kind of spiraled out of control. And the fact that they're trying to get out of it, it does make sense, because they are pretty awful at what they do.
They've publicly hinted at this desire during their live stream discussing the game they recently published, It Has My Face. The reason for the shift is because they haven't been successful launching a new game in years. Meet Your Maker cost them a lot of money. Project T got cancelled before it even had a chance to make any money back, and while better than the other two, Cassidy and Frank Stone did not fully meet financial expectations. This financial problem isn't as drastic as it once was, as a lot of the recent successes from DBD have helped Behaviour financially, but they're still not where they want to be, especially when they need a lot of money to help their shift into becoming a publisher.
So that means that they're essentially trying to milk DBD for as much funding as they possibly can get, so that they can make the shift to become a publisher, which is pretty much kind of explains a lot of why they favor survivors so heavily, why they don't care about the killer players, because the killer players are the minority in the player base. And of course, even further than that, is because like survivors are I would argue 4 times as likely, right, because of each survivor per match, 4 times as likely to buy a skin than a killer is.
This means that they're having to be careful with their funding. The current upper level management's hope is that DBD can keep the business afloat, at least until they get their footing as a publisher. This means that the new priority set by the management at Behaviour is to try and find the most immediately impactful change that can be made with the least amount of resources possible. If you look at the
that pretty much makes sense, yeah. And then the thing is that because they're so brain dead and stupid with their changes, and they have nobody that works there that actually plays the game, they're wasting hours upon hours upon hours trying to add in and design these stupid changes, instead of like, which is really weird to me, because logically you would think a drastic game changing, patch would not be, a good idea, because it probably costs a lot. It probably takes up a lot of time. And the fact of the matter is that they are idiotic and they don't ever think outside the box, and this is probably why. Just judging by what we're seeing here.
Recent changes that have come to the game. Most of them are a mishmashing of things that are currently in the game, like how the new anti-tunnel system uses Springtrap's white killer aura reveal and the effects of off the record. They are also implemented into the core game directly to try and fix the problem as fast and easily as possible for all players. They're aware these aren't the best fixes, but also something like a total tutorial revamp would not only take too long and use too many resources, but it would also have very minor immediate impact, as most players would not replay a tutorial for a game they've already spent tens or hundreds of hours in, even if they are terrible at the game. This limits the allure of changes like a full tutorial revamp, and thus they are not priorities. Even if...
Yeah, that does make sense. Logically speaking, that does make sense. Now, the problem with that, obviously, is that they want to make money and retain players, supposedly. But the people that they're catering to are the fresh installs, the casuals, and the people that don't play. So they're kind of pulled in two different directions. You don't want to put in the resources for a tutorial to fix that, to make the new player experience better, but then you also make the new player experience shitty, losing money that way, and then you lose people on the other end too. So both ways you're taking a loss. I don't think that either direction is a smart move, and especially because they're so strapped for cash in that sense. You know what I mean? Their funding is so dog shit somehow, mind you, somehow. Which honestly, like I've said, they keep wasting all their resources and time on stupid stuff. It's like, why are we not actually looking at the game critically and actually understanding how it's played and listening to people who actually played the game, not the crybabies in forums and Twitter, but the actual people that are consistent in giving good ideal suggestions and things like that.
In the very long run, these changes would make the game better as a whole. Plus, every time they have to rework a change that they want to introduce to the game, they have to delay everything else after it to try and fix the current change. But behavior is fine with delays, right? We've had 2 game health delays in the past year alone, right? What's the problem with another? The problem is licensors are starting to get a little frustrated by the game delays. It's important to remember that these delays aren't just knocking back the next chapter, they're knocking back all chapters. And according to the developers of Payday 3, Behaviour has already lined up licenses until...
Yep, this makes sense too. The idea that the delays are affecting their several years worth of licenses, very true. I mean, as somebody who only really has an interest in the licensing aspects of DBD, I personally am not a really big fan of a lot of their original characters, because I just think they're very lacking in a lot of ways. I think like the lore can really need some work, and the character designs and a lot of the characters that they put in are very lackluster. I mean, think Skull Merchant, for example. Like, it was marketed to be one way and completely failed into what it was supposed to do. In terms of like default outfits, and if we also consider Houndmaster as another example, like where it's like you say it's a pirate, but it doesn't look like a pirate. So yeah, like it's like just 2 examples of like recent, you know, releases where it's like it doesn't look that interesting or that cool. So I really don't care for it. So yeah, that's the idea. So the idea, like the 2 delays may have pushed our next license chapter out of the current financial year. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like I've said, even the Crossu I think was an awful patch and an awful chapter. I didn't care for it. I never got the character. I don't care to play the character. I have 0 interest in that character. You know, next, I just want to move on. You know, see what's coming next. And obviously it's going to be Vecna now, and I'm not really that interested in that character much either, but if they look interesting enough, I might try them out. But yeah,
mid-2028. If we assume 2 licensed chapters release a year, that means that there's potentially 6 different licensors who are actively being affected by those delays. And that's not counting cosmetic licenses a la Night of the Living Cats. Part of this frustration is most likely due to the recent delays, pushing the next chapter's sales entirely out of one financial quarter into another. With this also being the winter quarter, there's a strong likelihood that these sales would also be pushed entirely out of the current financial year, meaning that if the licensor of this upcoming chapter was hoping to have the DVD sales as a nice little cap to their final quarter of the year, these delays have now prevented that. Furthering this hypothetical, if there was a licensor who was being affected by these delays, who maybe already had a bit of a rocky relationship behavior, these delays may not have have gone over well to begin with, meaning a third delay would most likely risk losing a potential license or two. If Behaviour was to lose a license, not only would that obviously be a big financial loss from missed sales and a big community loss as we no longer get that license, but also Behaviour would then have to scrap all the work that went into whatever license they lost and then rush another chapter's production to fill that void. I guess they could claim to make it a proper operation health period, but I highly doubt that would happen for many reasons. And this is the major problem with Dead by Daylight right now. Some managerial risks mixed with what is ironically the very thing that brought DBD to life is now strangling the company's time and resources.
Yeah, besides the fact that they're blindingly incompetent and their time management and ideas are all awful and garbage. So overall, I mean, it's one of the many things that are holding them back.
That is the general explanation of why DBD is the way it is right now, quality-wise. But we're not done yet. In fact, we're far from it. There's still a lot of community questions that need to be answered, claiming that Behaviour is favoring survivors over killers, for one.
This is a burning question I've been wondering, too. Because why are survivors being so favored? I mean, this is going to be really interesting to hear.
Entirely wrong? Behaviour is favoring survivors a bit currently, but it's not because the devs are all survivor mains or anything like that. The truth is, there are three major reasons why survivors are being prioritized. First, survivor players are more profitable than killer players. On average, survivors are cheaper to produce, take less internal resources to maintain through things like bug fixes, and thus...
And there you go. I mean, goes without saying, obviously, why Behaviour would be favoring survivors. And even if we don't necessarily have written proof to describe one of these things, we can say without a shadow of a doubt that this is very true. Like I've said earlier in the video, I would imagine survivors are 4 times more likely to buy a skin because there's 4 per team and versus 1 killer, right? So overall, there's going to be a lot more people playing on the easiest side, and of course, there's plenty of skins, which I don't really find a lot of the survivor skins that interesting, but for some reason they make a lot of money. I don't know how. Personally, I don't see it. I don't get it. But yeah, survivors costing less to produce and maintain makes sense. I mean, it's literally just copy pasting the same thing. You know what I mean? So I get that. And apparently, according to one of Behaviour's community managers, Sable's bikini skin is by far the best-selling cosmetic in the history of the game. So I can understand that Behaviour must at least understand that the Gooner community is profitable.
Offer higher returns on investment. That being said, it's not why Behaviour is favoring survivors. It's more of like a reason behind the other two reasons. The real reason Behaviour is prioritizing survivors so much right now is because survivors are the ones who are disconnecting and uninstalling the game more. Additionally,
this is what I find really interesting. I'm not too sure why that is. Interesting. So it's saying like according to what we assume as a dev, survivors are apparently leaving the game. Apparently they think that it's more problematic. Well, I mean, I would understand why they think it's more problematic because they make the most money. So if they're leaving, you're losing money. So that makes sense. But at the same time, that also means they don't care about killers. Additionally, from what it says in the bullet point, more uninstalls are from survivor players from low to mid MMR. Which is exactly what I've been saying for ages. Like, this is exactly what I've been saying when it comes down to the skill level and what comes down to the quitting and stuff like that. These people that are quitting and DCing and uninstalling and all this type of stuff are in low to mid MMRs because that's where the majority of the players are. But also a lot of the players are not trying to learn how to play because they play it so extremely casually. Their MMR doesn't raise. So then, of course, they're going to end up just rage quitting constantly. Now, if you ask me, I've been saying this for ages. The way to fix this problem is directly addressing the gen speed, directly addressing how, like, the main gameplay loop. That, in its core, is the problem, in my perspective. Because if you make the gens a little more interactive, also providing passive slowdown at the same time, a lot of killers are not going to need to utilize strategies that the survivors don't like to go up against. You know what I mean? And then that will at least from my perspective, kind of lay it out a little bit further and at least allow for potentially different killer variety. Because of course, people are only going to be using the highest tiers because the gens are the fastest they can be lately. And it's like, of course, that ends up leading to the cycle of gen rush, which leads to S tiers, which leads to more gen rushing, which leads to S tiers, which leads to gen rushing, and everybody has a bad time.
A survivor disconnecting mid-match is seen as worse than a killer disconnecting. To tackle the easiest one first, it's a simple numbers game as to why survivor DCs are worse than killer DCs. When a survivor DCs, that impacts and ruins the game for the remaining 4 players, whereas when a killer DCs, the game is over and the survivors can easily queue into another match. When a survivor disconnects, the remaining survivors become frustrated from being down a player, because let's face it, bots still aren't that great, and some killers feel robbed of a quote-unquote proper victory, especially if it's early on in the match or there are multiple bots. As for the other two, if you look at the changes of this past year with the hindsight of trying to reduce survivor disconnects, it makes a lot of sense. Anti-camp, anti-tunnel, and anti-slug changes were all meant to help reduce the most common frustrations of survivors, while the pallet density change.
Yeah, okay, so this makes sense. Saying that almost every major change that was suggested to come to DBD this year is aimed to reduce frustrations for mid-level survivors. Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, I like I've been discussing like constantly lately, tunneling, slugging, camping. Always the main thing they complain about and complain about and complain about. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's still a skill issue. At the end of the day, people just want to just sit there, turn their brains off and watch a bar film, look at the sky. And unfortunately, that's not how the game works. Like they want to play Generator Simulator while the rest of us want to play a horror game. And that's what ends up leading to them being frustrated and DCing and I'm out of here and all this other stuff. And it's like, what do you like? You know, and I'm like, I just don't personally understand like that, the mentality. Like, I don't get it. Because even when I play Survivor, like the chase is the most interesting part. So I'm like, why would I want to be looking at a bar all day and healing all day and saving and healing and saving and doing the gen and healing and saving, like when I could be in chase and actually interact with the killer? Like that would be way more interesting, but whatever. And then it says, additionally, the pallet density changes length in early chases, but reduce chase length in late to endgame. Now, the problem is that with the pallet density changes before the recent, update to that, is that they overdid it where there's like a pallet every 2 steps, and then it made it even shittier and shittier for killers. And then it, ironically enough, did absolutely nothing, I think, for the survivors, hilariously, because not only did they get a healing speed at 4 seconds with their perks and combos like reassurance and things like that, the gens are also moving at the speed of light. And then on top of that, now you don't ever go down because of pallet density, right? Back then. So I've always wondered, like, what's the problem? Like, you got everything you ever wanted, like, but apparently it's not enough, you know?
Changes was to help prevent the frustrations of accidentally running into a naturally occurring dead zone at the start of the match, but also to skew chase times to being longer at the start of the game, but shorter near the end of the match once most of the resources have been used and players are more invested in the match, and thus less likely to DC after a short chase. All in all, this means that Behavior's most profitable and impactful players are leaving DBD, and Behavior wants to find a way to keep them around, since once again, they need these players due to needing the funding to help them transition into being primarily a publisher.
That makes sense. They're basically like trying to take a shit in our cereal bowl so that they can kind of leave, you know what I mean? That does make sense.
Now for the last thing I want to talk about is the community outreach programs, aka the consultant and creator programs. I spoke about.
That's a really good point, honestly, to kind of hear that. Now, I'm not really interested in discussing the consultants, but I do think that this does bring up a lot of interesting points, and it really does open up our eyes a little bit to a lot of things here. Like I really think it contextualizes a lot of stuff, kind of proves a lot of things that we've already been thinking, we already been saying. And I mean, obviously we have to take all of this with a grain of salt. We can't 100% confirm, from my understanding at least, 100% confirm that that was really a dev or whatever have you. But using basic, logic, you can understand that, yeah, mathematically that lines up. Like you can imagine that, of course, Survivor players are going to be more profitable, because they're going to be the more casual. They're going to probably be obsessed with their favorite character that has like 1,000 skins to buy and all these types of things. And of course, as you even saw with the Sable bikini skin, like apparently all the gooners are on Survivor, you know what I mean? Maybe they're playing with one hand, and maybe that's why they can, is Survivor, you only need you know what I mean? All they gotta do is basically do that. So it makes sense, right? And that might explain why a lot of those survivors don't look back when they're running. But regardless, let me know what you guys think in the comment section about the topic today. And do you think this really explains anything? Do you think that this really contextualizes anything? Is it like, And I mean, hey, like this might confirm why the game is in such a shit state and why a lot of us are leaving the game despite their best efforts. So, you know, let me know what you guys think. Of course, original video linked in the description. Consider supporting the channel by becoming a member on Patreon or YouTube for exclusive content and other perks like that. And let me know what you guys think. Well, I wanted to go ahead and take some time out to thank all my members from Patreon with Crow King 101, my YouTube members, Majora Jeff, Endire, Evil Peachy YT, Zero Mocker, Christian, HexDev, and Crow Vader, and for my Twitch subscribers, Cake is the Road, Danica 2002, Final Girl _ Bunny, Acklefin, Chili Cinderace, Zero Mocker, Ginsburg, Johns 117 _ Lovely Ghost TTV, Jar TTV, Zazaboo, and Crow Vader. Just wanted to thank you guys. And if you also want to have your name read off at the end of every video, make sure you join on one of these platforms to get one of those perks as well as the other perks you get. So appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much.